Our guest today is a fearless and forward-thinking prosecutor with more than 15 years' experience. As a former assistant district attorney in Brooklyn, special prosecutor at the State of New York Justice Center, and chief of Special Victims Unit in Rockland County. Now a practicing attorney dealing with family law, she is in the running for DA of Rockland County. Welcome, Patricia Gunning.
Good morning.
Good morning. It's so great to be here with you.
I'm glad to be here with you.
So, for people who don't really know, what does the DA do, and why is it so important for people to go out and vote?
Right, the DA is the chief law enforcement officer in the county. So that means they're in charge of prosecuting crime across the county, regardless of what it is, whether it's public corruption, domestic violence, crimes against children, or things like burglary, a home burglary, or robbery of a convenience store.
So does that mean that if somebody robs my home, or if my neighbor has been a victim of domestic violence, or even if there's a corrupt politician in my county, you are the one who is going to prosecute?
That's right. So the DA's office receives those cases from local police departments, but can also instigate investigations and arrests based on those investigations.
So Trish, when you are elected DA of Rockland County, you are going to be making history as the first woman to ever be in this position. Can you tell us a little bit about the moment you knew that this was your calling, to stand against the patriarchy and fight for all of us?
Right. So from as long as I can remember, I wanted to be a prosecutor. And my life took some twists and turns. And like most women, I've had some ups and downs in my life. I went to law school a little later. I became a lawyer just when I was turning 40, but my experience as a woman has driven my desire to serve in this county. I love this county, and I'm devoted to the work. I've been a longtime special victims prosecutor. I knew it was time for me to step out of my comfort zone and make a difference in this county.
Speaking of which, getting on this ballot was no easy feat. Speaking of Ken Zabrowski's efforts to knock you off the ballot, can you comment on this?
Look, I'm a political outsider, so some of what happens in politics was new to me, but it was rough to be challenged, and it was a very, very difficult process because people that stepped up and signed my petitions, their actual signatures were challenged, and we had to fight for every single one of them in court. You know, while it is part of the political process, it doesn't have to be, because people should have a choice about who they vote for. Fortunately, I prevailed in that challenge, and I'm on the ballot.
So as a prosecutor, have there been times where you had to pursue cases that were completely out of the box, that took a lot of time and energy, where most others would just let them fall to the wayside?
I have taken on tough cases throughout my entire career. That's a hallmark of who I am as a prosecutor and as a person. I have always been up for the challenge of taking on difficult cases. For instance, at the New York State Justice Center, which was created specifically to assist district attorneys across the state and to prosecute on its own cases that involve vulnerable New Yorkers, cases that typically went by the wayside. People in prosecuting cases involving people with mental health diagnoses, developmental disabilities, like someone who might not even be able to speak, who might have autism, people with addiction issues, and youth who are placed in facilities across the state. These are the most vulnerable victims that you would encounter as a prosecutor. And as the special prosecutor at the New York State Justice Center, we took those cases head on. But we didn't just prosecute. We helped district attorneys to prosecute as well in their own counties. So we were prosecuting, but also encouraging and assisting them to prosecute those cases. And at the same time, building training for law enforcement, because often law enforcement might encounter a person with special needs, for instance, a person who has autism. A line police officer or a patrol officer might not know how to approach a case involving a person who is not verbal or is not able to communicate with them about what happened.
So Trish, your campaign for DA of Rockland County is focused on protecting women and children, correct?
Yeah, in part. I've devoted my career to prosecuting cases against special victims, including women and children. It's a really important part of what the district attorney does and needs to continue to do in this county. 1 in 4 women have experienced domestic violence at some point in their lives, and 1 in 5 people have been a victim of sexual violence. So that's, of course, an incredibly important part of the mission of the DA's office. That said, it's my goal to protect all the people of our county from all types of crime, including gang violence, And public corruption, we're hearing so much about that. When I go out and talk to people about issues in my campaign, the number one issue people are talking about in our county is political and public corruption. And it's my intention to take that head on. And as an outsider, as a person who hasn't been part of the political machine that has enabled this to flourish in our county, I'm uniquely situated to take that on.
Sexual harassment is pushed under the rug, never spoken about, and never dealt with. And you're the type of woman who, when you see that something is unfair and wrong, you blow the whistle, you stand up, and you fight. And that's exactly why we need someone like you as district attorney of Rockland County, someone who is not afraid to stand up for what's right.
Like most people, my ability to stand up and speak truth to power comes from my experiences, and it's been informed by my own tough experiences in my life. I'm proud of the fact that I have always stood behind the people in my cases, and over the course of my career have stood up for thousands of victims of cases and now survivors. My courage doesn't come without vulnerability, right? Whenever we step outside of our comfort zones in an act of courage, we also, it comes sometimes with a feeling of vulnerability. Because so much of what I have done in my career has been fueled by my own experiences, but it's also been fueled by the bravery of the hundreds and hundreds of people at the heart of my cases who I have asked to be brave. And so now I'm stepping up in an effort to be brave for others.
If a victim is too traumatized to testify, what can the DA do without testimony to win the case?
Right, so sometimes what we can do is build what's called an evidence-based prosecution. An evidence-based prosecution seeks to build the case around the victim, and potentially we can go forward in a case without that person. They're not always possible, but we've got to try.
So are there any differences running as a woman in this campaign?
Sure. There are, unprecedented numbers of women stepping up and stepping outside their comfort zones to run for office, and I'm one of them. So, but as a political outsider and a newbie, one of the things that I've learned is the expectations for women are entirely different than they are for men. And I'm not complaining because I'm in this race and I'm in it to win. But I've told friends sometimes for men it seems like all they have to do is show up. When I do events and I speak, women will say to me, well, I didn't like your dress, or I didn't like what you were wearing, or, you need to be smiling more. And, we never say to a male candidate, hey, you should be smiling more, right? It's okay for them to be serious. But when I'm talking about things that are serious, like sexual violence or crimes against children, it doesn't come naturally to smile. I'm a serious, hardcore, hard-charging prosecutor. So, those are some of the things that you deal with as a female candidate that men don't deal with. Some of the other things that have been a challenge is that, obviously we want to elect women. We want to elect qualified women. And what I find is male candidates are not held to that standard. We have a candidate in this race that's entirely unqualified for the job, and yet that's not necessarily being challenged.
I'm Samara Cohen.
And I'm Trish Gunning, and I'm shaking up old school politics in Rockland County.
Let's shake it up!